What's the deal with the ES-345 anyway? Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, I've documented a whole bunch of 335s on my show, but I've never touched a 45. So let's go ahead and get this thing open to learn a little bit more about it, because perhaps it deserves more love than it currently gets. So inside here, we have a, wow, that's beautiful. I did pretty good ordering this one sight unseen. That's got some great wood grain. So that was a nice bonus surprise here, but just looking at it at first glance, it really does just look like a 335, except for your biggest difference here really comes down to the split parallelogram inlays, at least within the current production models. However, you're also going to notice you have a slightly different binding style on here. You have 3-ply binding rather than just a single band, so you got that extra black layer right here, which it might not look all that different from far away, but up close, you can really tell this one is a little bit more of a fancy boy. And that's the reason why the 345 was initially introduced. It was just meant to be a little bit fancier than the 335. The 335 was first introduced in 1958, and the 345 was introduced the year after that as basically a slightly higher end version. So besides what we already talked about, the original 345s also had a stereo output jack that you could use a special cable to split it into 2 different signals, and it also featured a baritone. Now historically, a lot of guys would just rip the baritones out because they say it sucked the tone, or they just didn't like all the weird quacky sounds that it could make. Check out this Lucille video if you need to learn more about the tones that you can get using one. And then you also had the 355, which was kind of like the 345, but bumped up even further as far as the aesthetics go. You get the ebony fretboard, you now get the custom blocks. It's like a Les Paul custom on a 335 standard. So when you're talking vintage 335, 345, there's quite a big difference. Another important thing to note is this is one of the new Gibson USA produced ones. Gibson had just recently moved the semi-hollow production from Memphis to Nashville. So if you need to learn more about that, you can check out this 335 video where I kind of teach you some more in-depth details on that. However, in current day production, there's not a lot different beside the additional 2 layers of binding and the different inlays on the fretboard, and the prices of them. So a 335 plain top is going to run you $3,499 yet today. They offer them in ebony, cherry, and a burst color. But they also offer a figured top, which is what we just saw earlier, at a $500 premium, but they change up the colors a bit. You can get a natural. There's also the same cherry, and then there's now an iced tea. You're going to notice that the plain ones have dot inlays, and the figured ones have the more 63 style block inlays. But our 345 is right in between there at $3,799, and they only get 2 colors, vintage burst and the cherry that we have here today. When it comes to semi-hollow guitars like these guys, cherry is an incredibly popular finish because a lot of famous guys used it, and hey, the whole Back to the Future scene featured a thin line cherry guitar, so it's kind of cool in that aspect. Those are all the core models and configurations anyways. There are exclusive collections on Gibson's website, maybe a few dealer special runs, but there's a deep purple 335, an olive drab one with modified electronics. Speaking of modified electronics, you can also try one out with P90 pickups in an ebony finish. And then this 345 is also offered in an ebony on Gibson's website, but also with gold hardware. So you've got options. You just got to do a little bit of digging. So as far as the current lineup goes, they just kind of offer you a little bit of everything without giving you custom shop pricing. So it really just comes down to the aesthetic appointments, because as far as I'm aware, this does not actually have the stereo output jack. But that'd be easy enough to mod in if you really wanted it. But no baritones on these guys. But being my first 345, I actually really like some of these cosmetic appointments. When you're just looking at these things online and not in person, it's really hard to notice that additional level of detail on the binding, and I'm actually really quite digging that. Because the whole 3-ply binding only ever seems to get used on semi-hollow and full archtop guitars, not too much on the Gibson solid body electrics. And I've always been a big fan of these inlays simply because they're on the Gibson Dove, my absolute favorite acoustic guitar. It's definitely got a good color, loving the wood grain. However, the back wood grain is a little bit more traditional, not as much to get as excited about. But we also have a little bit of a chatoyant effect on the back of the neck, so it's kind of candy cane striped. You guys will have to let me know which one is your favorite down in the comment section. You know, normally I'm all about flame tops and beautiful burst finishes, but I don't know, that extra layer of binding really makes the 45 stand out. Or maybe it's just the bright red cherry color. But to learn a little bit more about this 345, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take a look at its parts and specs. inside the 345. Let's go ahead and check this thing out, starting with our pickups. They are the calibrated T-type set. Now, if I remember the lore correctly, it's Chicago Music Exchange exclusive guitars that got these first, and then Gibson just kind of turned them into their own thing. But with having the decal, it's almost like they're going after the early 70s T-top vibe. But the bridge one is called the lead, and the neck is the rhythm. 7.59 k ohms in the bridge, 7.24 in the neck, and our middle for fun at 3.7. So yeah, they definitely got the T-top readings. Inside the cavity, you can see it's marked ES, Electric Spanish 45 for 345. And then we've got the SC for the 60s Cherry. And you can see the maple center block with the mahogany neck. And right here, you see the maple block capping off the truss rod. Then over here, you can see why some people call these guitars plywood, because the top is made out of a maple poplar maple sandwich. So you can see those layers right there. Then after putting those woods together, they put them in a machine to press them into the shape that they are. Because the 3X5s definitely have a very nice belly carve to them. They actually fall into the neck. So if you're ever looking at a pickup on one of these guitars, it actually does slant this way. Now you can reverse the pickup ring if you don't want it to be like that, as long as it's shaved correctly for the top anyways. So after that layer, you have a bracing made of spruce, and then you have the maple center block. So 335s have a center block, 345s, 355s, but the 330 does not have the center block. And modern day center blocks are actually chambered on the center. And then as you can see down there, the rest of the layers continue. So another bracing on the bottom of the block before the sides and bottom are joined in the exact same way as the top. And here I'll adjust the brightness of my camera just so you can see that wood grain a little bit more. I am in love with this example. Like, I couldn't have asked for a better sight unseen order because I love wood grain like that. I mean, if it's not going to be a flame top, it might as well have some gorgeous waves. As far as our bridge and tailpiece, we've got a Gibson ABR1 that is a true ABR1, but it's not mounted traditionally. It still has the stud in the body instead of being drilled directly to the top. This is what Gibson USA uses. You have to go custom shop if you want the true mounting. But instead of using the thumb wheels, you also have the option to use an Allen key in here to adjust it. And these are very lightweight. Same thing with the tailpiece, it weighs almost nothing. I was surprised to see these are really light in weight as well. And we've got independent volumes and tones for each pickup with an output jack on the face. But moving on from our body, we've got a mahogany neck with a rosewood fretboard. 22 medium jumbo style frets. This is the split parallelogram inlay, as it's called. These are the typical 24 3/4 inch scale length with a 12-inch fretboard radius and a nut that measures 1.7 inches, and that increases to 2.10 by the 12th. First fret necked up the 0.91, but 0.96 by the 12th. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. It's by no means a huge neck, it's just nice and rounded. Looking at the face of the headstock, nothing too much going on here. We've just got our Gibson Mother of Pearl logo with our crown, and our truss rod's looking good on this one. You can see through to the mahogany neck. Moving on to the back, you're going to notice you do not have a back plate on these things. If you want a back plate on a guitar that looks like this, you want to seek out a BB King Lucille. They're a little bit easier to modify. So the only way to view the electronics is either through the F-hole, or they actually fish them through the bridge pickup cavity. They just pre-wire them in, get them in there. Once you know what you're doing, it's not that bad, but if you want to watch me struggle try to put one of these things together, check out me saving Grandpa's old guitar in this episode. So that means we need to take a little bit of an endoscope trip here. Okay, so going in the bass side F-hole here. Here you can see that maple block that I was talking about. It actually has a little bit of flame figuring within it, but here's that spruce bracing on the bottom side that gets glued together, as well as that again here on the top side. So it's just a whole lot of wood that gets glued together here. And now right now we're in the cutaway section. So you can see they glue a block of wood right here at the very top of the horn, and then you have all this around the edges. That is kerfing. It just kind of supports the sides to the top. So that was just this area that you were seeing. But now let's check out the treble side. It's pretty much more of the same stuff. Here you can see where the wire from the neck pickup comes out. It's a little bit splintered there. But the bridge pickup's just like completely routed out there, so it doesn't have the same thing going on. But here we can see our electronics. We got the orange drop capacitors. Looks like the Gibson branded pots. It's kind of hard to tell. It's very close quarters in here. But we can take a second to appreciate the wood grain back here. Not quite as cool as the top, but you don't see this as much anyway. And hey, don't forget about the edges. That's got some good wood grain too, just like the top. Oh yeah, I love that. I ordered this when the new plant started production, so I waited like a good 2 years for this guitar. But what I'm really impressed by is maple is a different color than mahogany. And you can definitely see a color difference here, but it's actually the same finish. It's just maple is lighter in color than this, so it just looks different. But there isn't really that drastic of a change. That's probably more of a testament to just how deep this cherry stain is. But we've got some nice candy cane striping into the figuring of the neck here. And our Gibson Clusen Deluxe tuners, and our serial number of this one dates it to about mid-March of 2022, production number 456 for that particular day. So all said and done here, I would say the QC was actually excellent on this model. I mean, I'm sure there are tooling marks if you're really looking for them, but not as aggressive as we've been seeing. Pretty much the only thing I can really knock some points on is the nut looks a little bit over-filed to me as compared to other ones that I've seen, but it still seems to work just fine. So I don't think I could have asked for a better first 345, but it weighs 8 pounds, 5 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Now that we know all about the newest generation of the ES-345, what are my final thoughts on this? You know, straight out of the box, I was really digging the aesthetics of it, having that extra layer of binding. However, playing it, it just feels like such a different guitar due to all the different cosmetic appointments. It's kind of like a Les Paul Custom and a Les Paul Standard, even though they're pretty much the same guitar. One just has binding on the back and a little bit more fancier inlays, and yeah, a little bit with the fretboard material. They just feel like completely different guitars, and that's kind of what the 345 feels like, even though it's very similar to a 335. It might just be I need to get used to them, so maybe we'll try another 345 out in the future, but I hope this video was helpful for you if you were interested in checking out a newer one. This particular one will be on my website if you're interested in being the next owner of it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.